Look at your cup of coffee again. It may not be pure coffee anymore. Sounds ridiculous, maybe, but it's exactly what's happening on grocery shelves right now. What we once knew as a simple morning ritual, beans, water, and warmth, has quietly turned into a chemistry experiment. Many popular coffee products today are padded with fillers, artificial flavors, or powdered creamers designed to cut cost, stretch volume, and trick the senses. The label still says coffee, but the cup tells another story. Real coffee isn't loud or sugary. It greets you with a natural aroma, earthy, a little bitter alive. It feels honest on the tongue and fades clean. That quiet depth, that steady start to the day is what built generations of trust between the farmer, the roaster, and you. To preserve that trust and that taste, let's unpack 5 brands you may want to avoid this November. The sooner you know what's hiding in your mug, the safer and more satisfied you'll feel each morning. Number 1. Maxwell House. Maxwell House's French Vanilla Cafe mix looks innocent enough, a friendly blue tin, promising comfort and tradition. But the moment you peel the lid, the aroma hits sweet, creamy, almost cake-like. Steam rises heavy and perfumed, more dessert than dawn. For a coffeeholic, that first sip feels strange, warm yes, but hollow, like a song played through a closed door. Turn the tin around and the illusion cracks. The ingredient list doesn't begin with coffee. It begins with sugar corn syrup solids and partially hydrogenated oils, with instant coffee trailing halfway down the line. What you're tasting isn't coffee enhanced. It's coffee diluted engineered sweetness built to mimic depth. That formula wasn't born by accident. During the late 1980s, brands like Maxwell House faced rising bean prices and consumers chasing convenience. Powdered mixes became a clever solution, cheaper, shelf-stable, endlessly repeatable. Replace fragile coffee oils with flavoring hide bitterness behind vanilla, and you could ship comfort to every corner store in America. Profit met nostalgia and purity lost. To anyone who drinks coffee daily, the difference is immediate. Real coffee greets you with a balanced bitterness, a natural clarity that cuts through morning haze. But this mix, it smothers the senses. The hydrogenated oil coats the tongue, flattening acidity. The synthetic vanilla floods the nose, leaving no room for nuance. The aftertaste isn't finish, it's residue. A longtime drinker once told me it smells like coffee, but it doesn't wake me up, not really. He wasn't speaking about caffeine. He meant that spark, that conversation between bean and palate had gone silent. What's left is sweetness without story. Chemically, the reason is simple. Coffee's complexity comes from volatile oils released when beans are roasted and ground. In this mix, those oils are scarce or dead, replaced by fats and sugars that dull the mouth and trick the brain into pleasure. The first sip charms, the fifth tires. Your body expects brightness but receives heaviness. It's the difference between fresh air and perfume, and yet people keep buying it. Because the tin feels safe, the logo familiar, the flavor predictable. It recalls kitchens from decades ago, commercials that promised good to the last drop. We forget that the slogan was written for real brewed coffee, not a formula powdered for mass transport. Nostalgia became packaging, trust became taste memory. That memory, though, has a cost. Every scoop replaces the small bitterness that wakes the senses with a hollow sweetness that puts them back to sleep. Over time, even the definition of coffee drifts. Supermarkets now line aisles with mocha latte mixes and cappuccino blends that share only one thing with real coffee color. The rest is chemistry. From a manufacturer's view, it's genius. Sugar extends shelf life, creamers mute complaints about bitterness, and flavoring guarantees the same taste every cup. The spreadsheet looks perfect, but to a coffee lover, uniformity feels like loss. The unique crack of fresh grounds, the fleeting bloom of aroma, gone replaced by a pasteurized promise that never changes because it never truly lives. Still, there's hope in awareness. Brew a small cup of fresh Arabica next to this mix, and the contrast speaks louder than any label. Real coffee rises with clarity, fragrant, sharp, slightly wild. Its bitterness feels alive. The instant mix beside it smells like candy. One sip of the genuine cup and your tongue remembers texture, light, clean, honest. The other lingers, sticky, silent. That's the taste of substitution. It's easy to overlook how emotion and chemistry intersect here. For lifelong drinkers, coffee isn't just a stimulant, it's ritual, identity, companionship. Each morning's brew is a quiet handshake with the day. When that ritual is reduced to powder and sugar, something human disappears along with the oils. Yet admitting that loss isn't nostalgia, it's clarity. We can appreciate the convenience and still call it what it is, a comfort engineered to feel familiar. Awareness doesn't ruin the pleasure, it restores choice. Next time you reach for that tin, flip it over. Read the first 3 ingredients. Ask yourself whether sweetness should lead and coffee should follow. Because when a formula outranks the bean, you're not drinking coffee anymore, you're sipping a memory wrapped in marketing. Therefore, what comforts the tongue can quietly erase the soul of coffee itself. Number 2, Starbucks Bottled Frappuccino. The next one may not be surprising. It's Starbucks, the name that built modern coffee culture and in many ways quietly changed what the word coffee even means. At first glance, the bottled Frappuccino feels like a small luxury. The green siren looks reassuring, the glass cold in your hand, condensation tracing down its sides. It feels premium, sophisticated adult. But twist the cap, and you meet a truth that no logo can hide. The aroma is faint, the sweetness heavy, and the coffee barely there. According to PepsiCo's own product sheet, the first ingredients are reduced fat milk and sugar, not coffee. Then come stabilizers, preservatives, and flavoring agents that survive the long logistics between brewing, pasteurization, and shipping. What was once a freshly pulled espresso in a cafe is now a beverage engineered to last months on a shelf. The process is brilliant for business, catastrophic for flavor. Here's how it happens. Real cafe espresso begins as living chemistry oils, acids, and gases that bloom in seconds when hot water hits fresh grounds. But those same compounds are volatile. To make coffee shelf-stable, you must tame them. So Starbucks brews in enormous industrial tanks, filters the liquid through fine membranes, then heats it above the threshold where bacteria die, and so do the delicate aromatics that define coffee's character. Pasteurization erases the sparkle that makes each roast unique. The next step is bottling. Once the coffee is neutralized, sugar and milk restore mouthfeel and comfort. Thickeners such as carrageenan add texture, while emulsifiers keep everything smooth under months of refrigeration. Each bottle becomes identical, predictable, perfectly marketable. The result is not a failed product, it's a technical triumph. But taste-wise, it's coffee without risk, coffee without life. For a habitual drinker, that difference is stark. The bite, the edge, the whisper of roast that lingers on a real espresso gone. In its place sits a milky roundness, comforting yet mute. It pleases the tongue for a moment, then fades to sugar. The first sip wakes your memory, not your senses. Inside the factories where these drinks are bottled, stainless steel pipelines hum like arteries. Temperature sensors blink. Machines hiss as if breathing. Everything is measured to the millisecond, an orchestra of precision designed to remove uncertainty. But coffee at its core was never about certainty. It was about small variations, the roast just shy of dark. The crema that refuses to be tamed, the faint bitterness that makes the next sip worthwhile. When you control it too tightly, you erase its soul. A former plant technician once described the brew line as smelling like warm caramel, not coffee. He didn't mean it as criticism, just fact. That's the aroma of dairy and sugar being heated, not beans expressing themselves. It's also the smell that now defines what millions believe coffee should be. Because Starbucks didn't just industrialize coffee, it industrialized its image. The bottle itself is a symbol, beige, sleek, endlessly photogenic. The ads show a hand grasping it on the go morning light bouncing off glass. In that imagery, coffee stops being a beverage and becomes a prop, something you hold, not something you experience. When a brand controls the image long enough, it rewires expectations. People begin to think coffee should taste creamy, sweet, and uniform. And slowly that perception replaces the bean. Walk through any supermarket aisle and you'll see it rows of bottled lattes, mocha drinks, caramel blends. The labels shout, "Premium Roast Cold Brew Energy, crafted with love," but the color tells the real story, beige, not black. What was once the color of roasted authenticity is now the color of market comfort. Visually, Starbucks won the war long before flavor even entered the conversation. There's a quiet irony in it. Starbucks began as a roaster passionate about beans' origins and flavor integrity. Yet its greatest commercial success came from products where coffee plays a supporting role. The bottled Frappuccino did more than travel from Seattle to the world, it changed the world's visual vocabulary of coffee. The beverage aisle no longer smells like roast. It smells like vanilla and sugar, and somehow we accepted that as normal. For loyal fans, there's no malice in this evolution. They reach for the bottle because it feels reliable, elegant, safe. It doesn't spill, it doesn't scald, it fits in the car's cup holder. Convenience replaces craft without argument. But for those who still chase that original sharp aroma, that clean bitterness, this product feels like déjà vu, a faint echo of something once alive. Taste it side by side with a real cold brew, and the difference is almost philosophical. Cold brew has tension, a brightness that lingers behind the tongue. Frappuccino sits heavy, rounded, sweet. One awakens, the other soothes. Neither is wrong, but only one remembers the bean. And yet this bottled version dominates perception. You can sell 1 billion images faster than one honest flavor. Every billboard, every cafe refrigerator reinforces a new definition coffee as lifestyle, not substance. The word survives, the meaning drifts. By the time that drift completes its circle, we may have forgotten that coffee ever had edges at all. Perhaps that's the genius, to turn rebellion into routine craft, into commerce, taste, into symbol. But symbols can't be sipped. They can only be sold. By contrast, once flavor is replaced by image, the idea of coffee travels faster than the taste itself. Café du Monde. It used to taste like the river breeze, strong and stubborn, an old man once said, sitting outside a cafe near Jackson Square, staring at a tin of Café du Monde. Now it's just nice. He smiled when he said that word nice, the way people do when they know something once vivid has turned polite, and that in a single word captures the story of this brand. Café du Monde is more than coffee. It's a landmark, a photograph, a flavor of history itself. But as the world changed around it, the coffee changed too, not all at once, but one small compromise at a time. The tin still glows that familiar mustard yellow. The logo still carries the same French lettering it's worn for decades. And the blend still reads the same coffee and chicory. On the surface, nothing's different. Yet the spirit of that phrase, the balance, the bite, the local soul has quietly thinned out like steam drifting over the Mississippi before dawn. To understand the gap between what was and what is, you have to travel back to 19th century New Orleans. Coffee then was scarce, imported through long trade routes. Chicory, roasted from the root of a wild herb, became its partner out of necessity. It deepened color, added a touch of woodiness, and stretched every pound of bean. The result was bold, smoky, and unmistakably local. That rough, earthy brew poured through the mornings of a city alive with dock bells and brass horns. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. Over time, that necessity became tradition. What began as thrift grew into identity. Café du Monde built its reputation not on luxury, but on character. A drink you could smell a block away, thick as molasses and proud of its grit. Every cup carried the rhythm of the city, slow, stubborn, soulful. But tradition, once famous, attracts the weight of commerce. As the 20th century sped on, Café du Monde transformed from neighborhood ritual to global brand. Tourists lined up for beignets under green awnings, snapping pictures before taking their first sip. Demand soared. Packaging modernized. Production scaled up. Stainless steel roasters replaced small batch burners. Supply chains lengthened, and quality became something that had to survive shipping, not just satisfy a morning regular. The coffee gained convenience, consistency, and enormous reach, but lost intimacy. The chicory that once lent depth now mutes flavor. The beans once hand-selected for roast profile are now optimized for bulk. The brew still carries that familiar bitterness, but it no longer lingers with the same courage. It's a softer, rounder bitterness, safe for palates that may never have stood in Louisiana heat or smelled beans roasted at the riverfront. If you close your eyes and imagine an old New Orleans morning, you can still sense what it used to be. A metal pot hissing over a stove, wind carrying the smell of roast through an open door, jazz horns waking the street. Today, the same coffee comes sealed in a factory tin, distributed to airports and Amazon warehouses, sold as a memory you can ship worldwide. The sound is quieter, the scent more generic, a familiar rhythm replayed by machine. To be clear, this isn't a fall from grace, it's the price of success. Café du Monde is now a global emblem, a profitable enterprise, a postcard you can drink. The brand has gained everything a company could dream of: recognition, scale, longevity. But somewhere along that climb, it misplaced the vulnerability that once made it special. The taste that once reflected the city's resilience now reflects its branding: clean, polished, reliable. Locals still drink it proudly, of course. For them, it's more than flavor, it's heritage. Yet if you ask the elders, they'll tell you the same thing. The old man by Jackson Square did. It's milder, smoother, more convenient. The bite is gone. And with it, the conversation between bitterness and beauty that used to define the cup. A tourist buys a can today for a different reason entirely. Not because they crave that smoky New Orleans depth, but because the yellow tin looks great on a kitchen shelf. Proof of having been there. It's a keepsake that happens to brew. The symbol eclipses the substance. Taste it side by side with a fresh local roast and you'll sense the years in between. The old blend hits first with earthiness, then fades into smoke and heat. The modern one sits predictable, balanced, polite. The difference isn't quality, it's courage. The courage to be imperfect, to let the bitterness bite before it smooths. That courage is rare in a world that prefers sweetness and familiarity. Maybe that's why Café du Monde feels like a mirror of us all, richer, more comfortable but less daring. We've gained convenience travel and endless availability, but in the process we've traded away surprise. What was once a conversation between soil and soul is now a well-rehearsed performance, flawless but silent. Yet there's no resentment here, just reflection. Every tradition must choose between staying small or staying alive. Café du Monde chose life, and with that choice came adaptation. The tin endures, the brand thrives, and the tourists still queue. But if you listen closely under the hum of the espresso machines and the chatter of cameras, you can almost hear the ghost of that old flavor, the river breeze, that once carried coffee and chicory together, unfiltered and proud. Number 4, Dunkin hazelnut ground coffee. Have you ever wondered why a cup that smells so good leaves you feeling strangely flat afterward? That's the quiet paradox of Dunkin hazelnut ground. Coffee rich in scent, poor in substance. The aroma hits you first, warm, nutty, almost buttery. It fills the room faster than most fresh roasts, lingering long after you've poured the cup. But take a sip and the illusion begins to break. The sweetness is forward, the flavor soft, but the aftertaste empty. For a moment, you feel the comfort. A few minutes later, your energy fades, leaving behind that oddly hollow sensation many drinkers mistake for caffeine withdrawal. The label seems harmless enough: coffee natural and artificial flavors. But behind those words lies a quiet chemistry lesson. Most of the scent comes not from hazelnuts, but from synthetic compounds like acetone and vanillin, the same molecules that make ice cream smell inviting or candles feel cozy. These flavor oils are sprayed onto beans after roasting, bonding to the porous surface of already aged grounds. The result is a cup that seduces the nose while starving the body of what real coffee once offered: antioxidants, minerals, and a clean, natural lift. Real coffee, especially freshly roasted, contains compounds like chlorogenic acids and polyphenols, powerful antioxidants that help balance metabolism, stabilize blood sugar, and protect the cardiovascular system. But those fragile molecules don't survive the double heat of industrial flavoring. When the beans are coated, they're often reheated to dry the oils, a step that degrades the very nutrients the coffee once carried. What's left is caffeine and fragrance, a stimulant dressed in sweetness. Your body notices the difference even when your taste buds don't. That sugary aroma triggers a subconscious expectation of calories. The brain tells the pancreas to prepare, releasing a small pulse of insulin. Yet there's no real sugar in the cup, no nutrition to match the signal. The caffeine still enters the bloodstream, but the metabolism feels tricked, and within an hour that false stimulation gives way to fatigue. It's why so many people say flavored coffees make them jittery but not awake. For older drinkers, that difference can be even more pronounced. A 70-year-old woman in Boston once told me I love the smell, but it doesn't give me that clear energy anymore, it just keeps me busy. Her description may sound simple, but physiologically it's precise. The flavored oil coats the beans in lipids that slow caffeine absorption. The energy becomes uneven, arriving fast, fading fast, a roller coaster hidden behind a hazelnut smile. And then there's the matter of digestion. Natural coffee oils contain magnesium and niacin nutrients that aid liver detoxification and circulation. Artificial flavorings replace those with volatile compounds that provide no function, only fragrance. To the body, that's empty input stimulation without reward. Drink enough of it and your relationship with coffee quietly changes. You start craving the smell, not the clarity. Still, it's easy to see why the product sells. Dunkin mastered the emotional side of aroma. Walk into one of their stores and that hazelnut scent greets you before the door even closes. It's comfort on command. The marketing doesn't mention polyphenols or antioxidants. It doesn't need to. It sells familiarity, a sensory shortcut to calmness. Yet calmness should come from chemistry that supports the body, not tricks it. There's also the illusion of natural on the label. In food science, the term doesn't mean what most think. Natural flavor simply indicates the compound originally came from something in nature, even if it's been extracted, isolated, and rebuilt in a lab. A drop of vanillin derived from a tree bark can legally flavor thousands of bags. That trace molecule is enough to perfume an entire shelf and enough to convince you it's wholesome. Meanwhile, the coffee itself grows more distant. The longer beans sit pre-flavored, the faster they oxidize. The oils once meant to enhance actually trap air and moisture, dulling the roast beneath. Within weeks, the coffee loses the subtle bitterness that balances sweetness, the very profile that helps metabolism process caffeine efficiently. What remains is all smell, no depth. Imagine for a moment the kind of coffee your grandparents brewed. No syrupy scent, no marketing gloss. Just beans, water, and heat. The aroma didn't scream, it breathed. The energy came smooth, the focus steady. That wasn't nostalgia. That was nutrition doing its quiet work. Compare it to today's flavored blend, and you'll notice how inverted the ritual has become: first smell, then sweetness, then fatigue. A performance replacing a process. None of this makes Dunkin's hazelnut evil, only revealing. It's the modern promise of instant pleasure aroma that comforts caffeine, that jolts chemistry, that replaces nutrition. In a way, it mirrors much of our food culture energy, without sustenance, fullness, without fuel. The solution isn't to fear the cup, but to know it. Try returning to a roast with no added flavor, maybe grind it fresh. Let your nose recalibrate to what coffee actually smells like: earthy, sharp, alive. You'll find your body responds differently to steadier energy, lighter digestion, and a kind of wakefulness that lingers longer than the scent. Because the truth is simple, your body knows the difference between aroma and nourishment, even when your mind doesn't. Hence, the cup still wakes you up, just not the way coffee was meant to. Number 5. Green Mountain Coffee Breakfast Blend. It looks perfect, quick, clean, consistent, but every pod hides a trade-off. You press the button, a short hum, a puff of steam, and 30 seconds later a cup of coffee appears. No measuring, no filters, no spills. It feels like modern mastery caffeine made effortless. But experts say the science of this convenience quietly empties the cup of what makes coffee coffee. According to Dr. Samuel Lee, a food chemist at Boston University, coffee is one of the most chemically active beverages on Earth. Once you grind it, oxidation begins within minutes. Seal it in plastic and you trap both air and moisture, the enemies of freshness. Every K-cup, including Green Mountain's breakfast blend, holds only 9 to 11 grams of pre-ground beans, nitrogen flushed and stored for months before ever meeting hot water. Tests from the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis found that after 90 days of packaging, antioxidant content in sealed pods can drop by as much as 40%. On paper, it still reads as coffee, but in practice, what fills your cup is a caffeine delivery system, not a living brew. Let's start with the process itself. Real coffee begins with extraction water pulling oils, acids, and soluble compounds from the bean's porous structure. In a French press or pour-over, you control time and temperature, coaxing complexity out of the grounds. But in a K-cup, pressurized water shoots through in less than 20 seconds at over 90 degrees Celsius. That rapid extraction burns off delicate aromatics like caffeic acid and trigonelline, the very molecules responsible for bitterness balance and aroma depth. What remains are heavier compounds and caffeine, the crash without the climb. People think they're saving time, says nutritionist Dr. Eleanor Whitman, who studies metabolic response to caffeine. But the body responds differently when the cup lacks polyphenols and micronutrients. Those compounds moderate caffeine's absorption. Without them, the spike comes faster, the drop comes sooner. It's why pod coffee often gives a sharper buzz, but shorter focus, the chemistry of fatigue disguised as efficiency. Then there's the grind. To make pods uniform, the coffee is milled extremely fine, increasing surface area and oxidation. The moment it's sealed, it begins aging faster than any whole bean ever could. By the time you brew, most volatile oils have flattened. You still get the smell, but not the soul. Even temperature plays a role. Pod brewers by design push water at near boiling levels through plastic and metal components. Studies from Consumer Reports 2023 noted that certain machines release trace amounts of BPA and styrene oligomers when exposed to prolonged heat cycles. They're tiny, legally safe levels, yet another reminder that convenience always carries a shadow. But the most telling change is sensory. When you pour real coffee, it breathes the aroma expanding with oxygen, the flavor evolving as it cools. Pod coffee doesn't breathe, it performs. It gives you a quick perfume, a flash of flavor, then silence. As barista trainer Marco DeLuca put it, the cup is always identical, and that's the problem. No surprise, no life. From a nutrition standpoint, that sameness is measurable. Lab results show that brewed pod coffee contains significantly less magnesium niacin and chlorogenic acids than freshly ground equivalents. These micronutrients, minor as they sound, are what make coffee more than just a stimulant. They protect cells from oxidative stress, support liver function, and even play a role in glucose regulation. When they're gone, caffeine becomes a lone actor, powerful but reckless. Economically, the pods promise freedom, but they sell dependency. Each single-use capsule costs roughly 3 times more per ounce than bagged beans. Yet people pay willingly for what psychologists call perceived control. The illusion that pressing a button equals mastery over time. Dr. Whitman calls it ritual compression. We replaced meaning with mechanism. And then there's the waste. Billions of these pods end up in landfills each year. Even recyclable ones rarely are the foil filter, and plastic shell must be separated, an effort few make. Each pod weighs only a few grams, but together they amount to over 500 million pounds of trash annually in North America alone. The aroma may vanish in minutes, but the pod remains for centuries. A retiree once told me, "It's so easy, I just press a button." But somehow it doesn't taste alive. That single sentence sums up the trade-off our age keeps making: comfort over connection, efficiency over essence. Convenience feels good, but it leaves the body unsatisfied. The caffeine wakes you, yet the ritual no longer grounds you. And perhaps that's the quiet tragedy. Coffee was once a dialogue between soil heat and patience. Now it's a monologue from a machine. The hum of the brewer replaces the sound of boiling water. The pod replaces the pause. We wake up faster but feel less awake. Experts don't say you must abandon technology, they simply urge awareness. If you must use pods, drink them fresh, not stored for months. Pair them with real food, hydrate, and vary your routine. Because the body, much like coffee, wasn't built for repetition, it thrives on small imperfection. In the end, a K-cup doesn't ruin coffee, it redefines it. It teaches us how fragile authenticity is when pressed into plastic, how quickly ritual becomes residue. Maybe coffee has changed, or maybe we have. From powders and pods to flavors and foam, every shortcut we invent saves time but costs awareness. Yet beneath all the packaging, the truth remains simple. Coffee has always been a reflection of us. The purer our choices, the truer its taste. So before the next sip, pause. Smell it not for the sweetness, but for the story. Think of where it came from, how it was made, and how it makes you feel afterward. Because coffee isn't just about caffeine or comfort, it's about connection. And connection requires clarity. The best coffee isn't the most expensive or the fastest. It's the one chosen by a calm, clear mind, the kind that values the process as much as the flavor. Drink with awareness, and even the simplest cup can feel extraordinary.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.